It's the mid-1980s, and Dire Straits is one of the biggest rock bands in the world. Their album Brothers in Arms isn't just a success, it's a cultural phenomenon, selling over 30 million copies globally and dominating the airwaves with hits like Money for Nothing and Walk of Life. Mark Knopfler, the band's frontman and creative mastermind, is hailed as one of the greatest guitarists of his generation. But behind the glory, a storm is brewing, one that would ultimately lead to the band's demise. Think of it: a young Mark Knopfler, alongside his brother David, bassist John Illsley, and drummer Pick Withers in the gritty pubs of London. In 1978, their breakout hit Sultans of Swing captured the essence of a struggling band, and it catapulted them into the spotlight. They quickly evolved from pub rockers to international stars. By the time Brothers in Arms came around in 1985, Dire Straits had gone from a tight-knit group playing small venues to a global sensation playing stadiums. But the success came at a cost. With their rapid rise, the band started to feel the strain, exhausted from relentless touring, overwhelmed by the pressures of fame, and increasingly divided by creative differences. The members began to sense a shift. Dire Straits was no longer a band of equals, but rather a vehicle for Mark Knopfler's vision. Mark Knopfler's genius was undeniable. His intricate guitar work and poetic songwriting defined the band's sound, and his vision was largely responsible for their musical evolution. Yet, as time went on, Knopfler's desire for creative control turned into a double-edged sword. While it brought them success, it also sowed seeds of discord. Former band members, including Knopfler's brother David, often spoke about feeling sidelined and constrained by Knopfler's increasingly dominant role in the band's direction. David Knopfler left during the recording of their second album, Communique, citing artistic differences and the pressures of being under his brother's shadow. The departure marked the beginning of a shift in the band's dynamic, with Mark taking the reins even more tightly. By the time Brothers in Arms exploded onto the scene, tensions were at an all-time high. A world tour that seemed never-ending, a record-breaking album, and a newfound stardom that left no room for personal space. The tour lasted well over a year, pushing the band members to their limits. As the exhaustion set in, the band's internal friction grew even more evident. Mark Knopfler was deeply focused on maintaining the band's artistic integrity, while others, like John Illsley, still hoped to keep the camaraderie of their earlier days alive. The pressure of constant touring and Mark's insistence on perfection took its toll on the band's morale, leading to an environment where creative freedom became stifling rather than inspiring. One of the key moments that marked the beginning of the end came in June 1988, when Dire Straits headlined the Nelson Mandela 70th birthday tribute concert at Wembley Stadium. The energy in the air was electric, but behind the scenes, the atmosphere was anything but. Knopfler, weary from years of being at the helm, began to view the band as an unwieldy monster that he could no longer control. This realization led to the announcement of a hiatus later that year. Dire Straits, once unstoppable, was suddenly put on ice, with no promises of a return. Fans hoped the break was temporary, but Mark Knopfler's desire to explore other musical ventures hinted at deeper fractures. In 1991, Dire Straits made a brief comeback with the album On Every Street. While it was met with moderate success, it lacked the magic that had defined their earlier years. The tour that followed was grueling, marked by long stretches away from home, strained relationships, and a sense that the band was merely going through the motions. Even Knopfler himself seemed disillusioned by the process, noting in interviews that the experience felt more like a burden than a celebration of music. By the time the tour wrapped up in 1992, Dire Straits had sold over 120 million albums worldwide, a testament to their enduring appeal, but Knopfler made it clear that he was done with the band for good. He turned his focus to solo projects, and the rest of the members moved on to their own pursuits, leaving the question of what could have been hanging in the air. For years, fans speculated about the reasons behind Dire Straits' breakup. In recent reflections, Mark Knopfler has opened up about the difficulties of managing the band's immense success. He acknowledges that his own high standards and need for control played a significant role in the band's dissolution, but he also points to the demands of the industry and the toll it took on all the members. Knopfler once remarked that being in Dire Straits stopped being fun, hinting that the price of perfection might have been too high. Still, Knopfler's decision to end Dire Straits was met with a mix of admiration and resentment. Some saw him as a visionary who knew when to walk away, while others blamed him for pulling the plug on a band that still had more to give. As the years have passed, even fellow band members like John Illsley have reflected on the split with a sense of acceptance, recognizing that it was inevitable given the circumstances. Dire Straits remains a band whose songs are as timeless as their story is tumultuous. Tracks like Romeo and Juliet, a poignant ballad of love and loss in Brothers in Arms, with its haunting reflections on war and the human condition, continue to resonate with listeners, their themes as relevant today as when they were first written. The lyrics, crafted with the accuracy of a novelist, demonstrate Mark Knopfler's profound comprehension of musical storytelling. Yet, beneath the surface of these songs lies a band history filled with contradictions and conflict. A story that is as much about the music as it is about the dynamics between the members who created it. A group of young musicians thrust into the spotlight, their raw talent capturing the spirit of the late 1970s and 1980s, when Dire Straits seemed to dominate the airwaves. They went from playing small clubs in London to selling out stadiums around the world, almost overnight. But the rapid rise to fame brought its own set of challenges. The relentless touring, the pressure to produce chart-topping records, and the inevitable creative differences that come with such intense collaboration began to wear down the band's cohesion. Mark Knopfler, who had emerged as the band's undisputed leader, faced the burden of maintaining not just his vision for Dire Straits but also the expectations of millions of fans. This pressure would shape their story, creating a delicate balance between success and struggle that would define their legacy. Was Mark Knopfler the genius who built Dire Straits and deserved to call the shots, or did his need for control suffocate the collaborative spirit that made the band special? Knopfler's leadership was indisputable. His distinctive fingerstyle guitar playing, moody songwriting, and knack for weaving narratives into melodies set Dire Straits apart from their contemporaries. Think of the studio sessions Knopfler hunched over his guitar, meticulously working out every note and arrangement, while his bandmates waited, sometimes impatiently, for their turn to contribute. His drive for perfection brought the band some of their greatest successes, but it also led to tensions that simmered beneath the surface. As the group evolved, other members began to feel sidelined, their creative input diminished in the shadow of Knopfler's singular vision. In interviews, Knopfler often expressed his belief that maintaining a consistent sound and direction was key to Dire Straits' success, but his focus on artistic integrity came at a cost. Drummer Pick Withers left the band after the recording of Love Over Gold in 1982, citing dissatisfaction with the lack of collaboration. He felt that the studio had become less of a space for collective creativity and more of a workshop for Knopfler's ideas. By the time Brothers in Arms, the album that would solidify their place in rock history, was released in 1985, Dire Straits was effectively Mark Knopfler's project. While the album's lush production and sweeping soundscapes won critical acclaim and sold over 30 million copies, the process took a toll on the band's dynamic. Success can be a double-edged sword, and for Dire Straits, the acclaim of Brothers in Arms was both a pinnacle and a turning point. The album, driven by singles like Money for Nothing with its iconic guitar riff and pointed critique of the music industry, catapulted them into the stratosphere of 1980s rock stardom. But with this level of success came new pressures. The non-stop touring schedule that followed was grueling, pushing the band members to their limits. They performed in front of hundreds of thousands of fans, but the exhaustion was undeniable. The camaraderie that had once fueled their early days was replaced by a sense of isolation and burnout. On stage, they were a tight unit, delivering performances that left audiences breathless, while offstage they were drifting apart, each member grappling with the loneliness that can come with life on the road. Knopfler, ever the perfectionist, felt the strain of trying to maintain their momentum. He began to see the limitations of Dire Straits as a traditional band, longing to explore different musical landscapes without the constraints of the group's expectations. This desire would ultimately drive him towards a solo career, but not without leaving a void in the hearts of fans who had come to associate Dire Straits with a specific sound and spirit. By 1991, when Dire Straits released On Every Street, the cracks were more visible than ever. Although the album went platinum, the creative spark that had once defined the band seemed to be waning. The tours that followed felt more like an obligation than a celebration of their music. The friction between the band members, which had once been a source of creative tension, had become more divisive. John Illsley, the bassist and one of Knopfler's closest confidants in the band, later spoke of how the joy of playing together had gradually been overshadowed by the weight of their past achievements and the pressure to keep living up to their name. When Knopfler finally decided to dissolve Dire Straits in 1995, it was a decision met with both sadness and relief. The band's journey, marked by meteoric success and internal strife, had come to a natural end. Yet, Knopfler's choice to walk away also underscored a fundamental truth about the music industry that sometimes preserving the integrity of the art means letting go of the things that made it possible in the first place. For Knopfler, it was a chance to rediscover his love of music on his own terms, free from the expectations that had come to define Dire Straits. For fans, it was the end of an era, one that had been as emotionally turbulent as it was creatively rich. Even after the band's dissolution, the music of Dire Straits continued to find new audiences. The emotional depth of their songs, paired with Knopfler's evocative guitar work, gave their albums a timeless quality that transcended the period in which they were created. Think of how Sultans of Swing still pulses with the energy of a late-night bar band, or how Telegraph Road takes listeners on a sprawling journey through history and urban decay. But as much as the music endures, so too do the questions about what could have been had the band found a way to balance Knopfler's creative vision with a more inclusive approach to collaboration. Was Dire Straits' story destined to end in disbandment, or could the tensions have been resolved with a different approach? Perhaps, as with many stories of artistic partnerships, the truth lies somewhere in between. Mark Knopfler's need for control may have stifled the contributions of his bandmates, but it also brought forth some of the most enduring music of the era. The legacy of Dire Straits is thus one of unresolved contradictions, a story of how ambition can drive a band to greatness while simultaneously sowing the seeds of its demise. Ultimately, Dire Straits' music endures, but their journey serves as a cautionary tale about the fragile balance between ambition and harmony in the world of rock and roll. It is the story of a band that reached the pinnacle of success, only to realize that the very thing that had propelled them forward, the drive for excellence, was also pulling them apart. Decades later, fans still play on Dire Straits albums, drawn in by the timeless allure of their songs. They listen to Knopfler's voice, with its signature mix of melancholy and wisdom, and hear not just the notes but the echoes of a band that once ruled the airwaves. Yet behind those melodies lies a story of human frailty, of friendships tested, and of a band whose journey, for all its triumphs, was never as simple as the chords that defined their sound.